On May 17th, President Joe Biden released his 2020 tax returns, as did Vice President Harris. In doing so, they revived the tradition of voluntary disclosure by American presidents. Right now, Congress is considering legislation to make these disclosures mandatory. So this is a good time to take a closer look at our presidents and their taxes. I'm Bob Goulder, contributing editor with Tax Notes. Joining me is Joe Thorndike, director of the Tax History Project, where he's been curating our collection of presidential tax returns for the past 25 years. Together, we're going to explore the past, present, and possible future of presidential tax disclosures. All in 5 minutes. Wish us luck. Okay, Joe, you have a list of 3 things that everyone should know about presidential tax returns. Let's hit it. Item 1, presidents are taxpayers, just like you and me, only different. Can you explain?
Well, Bob, presidents pay income taxes, just like millions of other Americans. But oddly, that was not always the case. Until the 1920s, most people thought presidents were actually exempt from having to pay income taxes, at least on their official salaries. The Constitution says that Congress can't cut a president's salary while in office. And for a long time, people figured that meant that Congress couldn't tax it either. As a result, 7 presidents got a constitutional tax break, including Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses Grant, Woodrow Wilson, and a bunch of others. Or so we think. But it's hard to know for sure since presidential tax returns are private, just like everyone else's. It wasn't until the 1950s that a presidential candidate chose to release his tax returns to the public, and not until the 1970s that a sitting president actually began to do it annually.
Okay, that brings us to item number 2. Presidents are both taxpayer-in-chief and tax collector-in-chief. Is that why they release?
Yes, it is. The president has a dual relationship with the tax system. As the first citizen, he's the first among equals. The president is the symbolic taxpayer in chief, and that means that his personal behavior gets freighted with broader ideas about civic responsibility. The president is also the tax collector in chief. As the head of the executive branch, he has the ultimate responsibility for enforcing the tax laws that bind every taxpayer, including the one who sits in the Oval Office. Now, trying to play those 2 roles at the same time gets complicated because the problem with being the tax collector in chief while also being a high-profile taxpayer is that you end up being the collector of your own taxes. Now, historically, presidents have taken a hands-off approach to the processing of their own returns, but they supervise the agency that processes all these returns, including their own, and that's the IRS. That creates the potential for some bad things to happen. There might be overt meddling. They might direct the IRS to do something, or it might be more subtle. The IRS might take it easy on a president without him even asking because the president is their boss. And it's hard to know whether these things are going on because the processing of a return is private for a president, just like it is for everyone else. And that's why voluntary tax return disclosure is important.
Okay, our last item is something that you have personally testified to Congress about. Voluntary disclosure is good, but not great. What do you mean?
All right, so the public release of a presidential return allows for a sort of crowdsourced audit. Upon release, a return gets a hard look from tax experts, journalists and law professors and tax note subscribers. They all scour the return looking for problems or oddities or whatever. In the process, we learn a lot about that return. But these experts, they don't have all the information that you need for a real audit. The only audit that counts is the one that's done by the IRS, and it's still done without meaningful oversight. Ultimately, a crowdsourced audit is just not a great solution for the problem of presidential tax paying. First, this voluntary tradition of disclosure has no rules. It's flaky. Presidents have interpreted its requirements differently over time. Some have released complete returns, others less complete returns. It's up to them. The tradition has also grown over time to include not just sitting presidents and vice presidents, but party nominees, and that's good. But candidates are even more inconsistent about what they choose to release. Some release dozens of years of complete returns, others just a single Form 1040. Timing varies also. Some candidates release early, others late, some at the very last minute, like Mitt Romney. And if released returns are later amended, the public has no way of finding out since amended returns don't ever get released. These inconsistencies make the voluntary tradition contentious. Reporters fight with the candidates and office holders about unwritten rules, and those arguments devolve into a lot of shaming and pleading and begging and self-justification. And along the way, we cheapen ideals like transparency and make them seem optional, even dispensable. A better disclosure regime would be mandatory and more comprehensive.
Want more like this? Be sure to hit that subscribe button for more tax videos. Special thanks to our executive producers, Jasper Smith and Janelle Julien, showrunner Paige Jones, and audio and video engineer Jordan Parrish.